In 1987, 5 passengers vanished aboard a private jet. 25 years later, one of them called his girlfriend. How is it possible for someone to disappear for over 2 decades and then simply make a phone call? And why wait so long to do it? Before we delve deeper into this unsettling story, if you appreciate real-life mysteries like this one, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you do not miss any new cases. Tell us in the comments from what city you are watching this video. We are curious to know where our community is spread across the world. Now let us uncover how it all began. The year was 1987, a time of vibrant energy and boundless ambition in the heart of New York City. Among the city's many dreamers were Emily and Daniel, a young couple whose love story seemed destined for a fairy tale ending. Emily, a budding architect with a keen eye for design, shared a cozy apartment in the West Village with Daniel, a brilliant and driven financier on the cusp of a major breakthrough. Their evenings were filled with laughter, shared dreams of a future home, and quiet promises whispered beneath the city lights. Daniel, with his sharp intellect and unwavering determination, was preparing for a pivotal business trip to Miami, a deal that promised to elevate his career to new heights. He was set to travel on a private jet with 4 of his esteemed business partners, a symbol of their shared success and ambition. The morning of their departure was crisp and clear, a perfect autumn day that offered no hint of the storm that was about to break. Emily kissed Daniel goodbye, a lingering embrace filled with the usual mixture of longing and excitement. He promised to call as soon as they landed, a routine gesture that offered comfort and reassurance. The jet took off from a private airfield in New Jersey, a sleek silver bird disappearing into the vast expanse of the sky. For a few hours, life for Emily continued as normal, albeit with a quiet anticipation for Daniel's call. But as the afternoon faded into evening, and then into night, the call never came. Her initial worry slowly escalated into a gnawing fear. The news reports began to trickle in, vague at first, then increasingly grim. A private jet, with 5 souls on board, had vanished without a trace somewhere over the Atlantic. The dream of their future, once so vivid, abruptly dissolved into a terrifying unanswered question. The initial reports were chaotic, fragmented, and terrifying. Air traffic controllers had lost contact with the private jet approximately 200 miles east of the Bahamas, an area notorious for unpredictable weather patterns and vast, unforgiving expanses of ocean. The immediate assumption was a catastrophic mechanical failure or a sudden severe storm. Search and rescue operations were launched with an urgency that spoke volumes about the gravity of the situation. Coast Guard cutters, naval vessels, and civilian aircraft scoured thousands of square miles of the Atlantic, their powerful searchlights piercing the darkness, their sonar equipment sweeping the depths. Every passing hour intensified the family's agony. Emily clung to every news bulletin, every official statement, her heart a fragile vessel battered by waves of hope and despair. She joined the other families at a designated waiting area, a sterile conference room in a downtown New York hotel that had quickly become a crucible of shared grief and desperate prayer. The days blurred into weeks. The initial frenzy of the search began to wane, replaced by a grim, methodical sweep. Experts hypothesized about engine failure, structural disintegration, or even a sudden, unrecoverable dive. Yet, no debris was found, no telltale oil slicks, no floating remnants that might offer a clue. It was as if the aircraft and everyone on board had simply vanished into thin air. Emily's nights were plagued by vivid, terrifying dreams of the ocean's vastness, of Daniel's face, smiling, then fading into the darkness. During the day, she would mechanically go through the motions of life, answering calls from concerned friends and family, offering polite but empty assurances that she was holding up. But inside, a hollow ache grew with each passing moment of silence. The official search was eventually scaled back, then formally suspended after 3 agonizing weeks. The authorities cited the vastness of the ocean, the lack of any physical evidence, and the dwindling hope of finding survivors. For the families, this suspension was not an end to their pain, but rather the beginning of a different kind of torment. The torment of perpetual uncertainty. They were left with no answers, no closure, only an unbearable void where their loved ones had once been. Emily, however, refused to accept the official narrative. She spent countless hours poring over maps, meteorological reports, and aviation journals. She contacted every expert she could find, from retired pilots to oceanographers, hoping to unearth some overlooked detail, some hidden anomaly. She followed every lead, no matter how remote, every rumor, no matter how far-fetched. Her apartment, once a haven of shared dreams, slowly transformed into a research hub, littered with charts, articles, and handwritten notes. Friends tried to gently persuade her to move on, to accept the inevitable, but their well-meaning advice only fueled her resolve. She felt a profound, almost spiritual connection to Daniel, a persistent belief that he was out there, somewhere. This unwavering conviction became both her salvation and her curse, keeping her tethered to a fading hope while the rest of the world slowly moved forward. The other families eventually held memorial services, a desperate attempt to find some semblance of closure, even without bodies to bury. Emily attended some of them, offering her quiet condolences, but she could not bring herself to participate fully. For her, memorializing Daniel felt like an act of surrender, a betrayal of her deep-seated belief that he was not truly gone. The silence that followed the disappearance of the jet was not empty for Emily. It was filled with the deafening echo of unanswerable questions. The years that followed Daniel's disappearance were a testament to Emily's resilience, yet also a subtle erosion of her spirit. The frantic search had ceased, the news cycles moved on, and the world expected her to do the same. She found solace in her work, immersing herself in complex architectural designs, the precise lines and mathematical calculations offering a temporary escape from the chaotic uncertainty of her personal life. Her career flourished, bringing with it a sense of purpose and achievement, a tangible structure in a world that had suddenly become formless. She moved from the West Village apartment, too full of ghosts, to a sunlit brownstone in Brooklyn, a conscious effort to build a new life, brick by brick. Friendships evolved, some faded, unable to bear the weight of her unresolved grief, while others deepened, offering quiet support and understanding. Among these steadfast companions was Scott, a kind and steady engineer she had met through mutual friends. Scott possessed a quiet strength and an unwavering patience that slowly, almost imperceptibly, began to mend the fractured pieces of Emily's heart. He never pushed her to forget Daniel, never tried to replace his memory, but rather offered a gentle presence, a safe harbor in her emotional storm. Their relationship developed gradually, a slow dance of hesitant steps forward and occasional retreats. Emily wrestled with guilt, feeling as though moving on was a betrayal of Daniel, a definitive acknowledgement of his absence. Yet Scott's quiet devotion and the aching loneliness in her own life eventually led her to accept his proposal of marriage. Their wedding was a small, intimate affair, devoid of the grand celebration she had once envisioned with Daniel. It was a commitment to the present, a brave step into a future that was, by necessity, different from the one she had meticulously planned. With Scott, Emily built a new family. They welcomed 2 children, a son and a daughter, who brought a vibrant, noisy joy back into her home. She embraced motherhood with a fierce love, finding profound fulfillment in nurturing these new lives. The laughter of her children, the quiet rhythm of family life, created a veneer of normalcy, a semblance of peace. Yet, beneath the surface of this outwardly fulfilling existence, a ghost lingered. Emily never fully removed Daniel's old number from her contacts, a small, irrational act of defiance against the finality of his disappearance. It was a private relic, a silent testament to a love that, despite the passage of time, refused to be entirely extinguished. Sometimes, in the quiet hours of the night, when the house was still and the city outside was hushed, she would find herself tracing the numbers on her phone screen, a phantom limb reaching for a connection that she knew, logically, could never be. Her dreams, though less frequent, still occasionally brought Daniel's face into focus, a reminder of the unwritten future that had been stolen from them. These moments were bittersweet, a painful reminder of what was lost, yet also a confirmation that a part of her heart, though now shared, would forever hold a place for the man who had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only echoes of silence and the persistent, unanswerable question of what truly happened that day over the vast, indifferent ocean. Life settled into a rhythm for Emily, a comforting cadence of work, family, and domesticity. The sharp edges of her grief for Daniel had softened with time, becoming a dull ache rather than a gaping wound. Yet, despite the apparent normalcy, a subtle disquiet began to permeate her days, like a faint, unsettling hum, just beyond the range of hearing. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly, with fleeting observations she dismissed as products of an overactive imagination or lingering trauma. The first instance was a photograph sent anonymously to her office, a candid shot of a bustling street fair she had attended with Scott and their children. In the background, partially obscured by a lamppost and a throng of people, was a figure that stirred a deep, primal recognition within her. The angle was poor, the face indistinct, but the posture, the way the person held their head, sent a jolt of recognition through her. It looked uncannily like Daniel. She stared at it for a long time, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs before rationally dismissing it. It was a trick of light, a coincidence, a desperate projection of her subconscious mind. Millions of people walked the streets of New York, and it was only natural for her mind to seek familiar forms in the unknown. She filed the photograph away, a curiosity, a testament to how deeply Daniel was ingrained in her memory. Then came the sense of being watched. It was not a constant, oppressive feeling, but rather a fleeting sensation, like the prickle of static electricity on her skin when she was alone in a crowd, or the almost imperceptible movement in her peripheral vision when she glanced out her window at night. She would turn sharply, convinced she had seen a shadow detach from the darkness or a face linger a moment too long, but each time there was nothing. The streetlights shone steadily, the windows of neighboring buildings were dark, and the park across the street was empty. She attributed these feelings to the stress of her demanding career and the lingering effects of past trauma. Grief, she knew, could play cruel tricks on the mind, conjuring images and sensations from the depths of memory. One afternoon, while volunteering at her children's school fair, she heard a snippet of conversation, a familiar turn of phrase spoken by a stranger passing by. It was an obscure quote from a book Daniel had loved, one they had often recited to each other. Her head snapped up, searching frantically for the speaker, but the crowd was too dense, the voices too numerous. Her mind raced, grasping for a connection, but it was illogical, absurd. Coincidences happened. People shared interests. Yet a tiny, persistent seed of doubt began to sprout within her. These occurrences individually were easily rationalized away. Collectively, however, they began to weave a subtle tapestry of unease. Emily found herself increasingly distracted, her thoughts drifting to the possibility, however remote, that these were not mere coincidences. She would scrutinize faces in crowds, her gaze lingering a moment longer on strangers who bore even the slightest resemblance to Daniel. She never spoke of these incidents to Scott, fearing he would worry, or worse, dismiss her concerns as signs of an unraveling mind. She had worked so hard to build her new life, to present an image of strength and stability. Admitting to these unsettling experiences felt like admitting to a lingering instability, a crack in the carefully constructed facade. So, she kept them to herself, locked away in a private corner of her mind, where the whispers from the periphery slowly grew louder, challenging the comfortable reality she had so painstakingly created. The idea, outlandish as it seemed, that Daniel might somehow be connected to these strange occurrences was a dangerous thought, one she fought to suppress, even as it tightened its grip on her imagination. The night of the 25th anniversary of Daniel's disappearance was particularly difficult for Emily, a date etched into her memory with the indelible ink of profound loss. Every year, as October 23rd approached, a subtle melancholia would settle over her, a quiet acknowledgement of the unhealed wound. She had spent the evening navigating the usual family rituals with Scott and their children, a testament to her enduring strength and the life she had painstakingly built. Their laughter and stories filled the house, a comforting shield against the intrusion of painful memories. But her mind was miles away, adrift in the past. She moved through the hours on autopilot, offering smiles and participating in conversations, all while a part of her remained tethered to the distant, unyielding echo of 25 years ago. After everyone else had retreated to the quiet sanctity of their bedrooms, Emily found herself drawn to the living room, a space that offered a rare moment of solitude. The city lights, a vibrant tapestry beyond her window, shimmered with a detached beauty, their distant glow mirroring the unreachable stars. In her hand, she held a simple, silver-framed photograph of herself and Daniel, captured during a summer picnic in Central Park. Their faces in the image were young, unburdened by the weight of unforeseen tragedy, full of the bright, boundless promise of a shared future that had been so cruelly snatched away. A wave of profound, aching sadness washed over her, a quiet acceptance that the chapter of her life with him was irrevocably closed, reduced to a cherished memory and a pervasive sense of what might have been. She traced the contours of his smile with her thumb, a silent conversation across the chasm of time. The silence of the house, broken only by the distant hum of the city, pressed in around her, amplifying her solitude. It was precisely 11:33 in the evening, a time that would forever be seared into her consciousness, when her phone, resting silently on the polished surface of the coffee table beside her, vibrated. The sudden tremor shattered the stillness, pulling her sharply from her reverie. The screen illuminated with an incoming call, displaying only the stark, impersonal words, "Unknown number." Her first thought was that it was a telemarketer, an irritatingly persistent intrusion into her private vigil, or perhaps a wrong number, an accidental dialing that held no significance. She almost dismissed it, her finger hovering over the red decline button, intent on returning to her quiet grief. But something, an almost imperceptible tremor of intuition, a prickle of unease that felt strangely akin to a premonition, compelled her to pause. A flicker of curiosity, an illogical pull, tugged at her. Against her better judgment, against every rational inclination, she slowly reached out, her fingers closing around the cool metal of the device. With a deep, almost imperceptible breath, Emily brought the phone to her ear, stepping unknowingly across a threshold into a reality far stranger and more unsettling than any she had ever dared to imagine. The future, which she thought she had long since defined, was about to unravel in the most unexpected and terrifying way. Emily's hand trembled slightly as she brought the phone to her ear. The silence on the other end was heavy, filled only with a faint, almost imperceptible static, like the distant hum of a forgotten frequency. She hesitated, a rush of conflicting emotions warring within her. Dread, disbelief, and a flicker of a long-buried hope. Then, a voice, raspy and weary, yet undeniably familiar, broke the silence. "Emily?" Her breath hitched in her throat. The single word, spoken with the quiet cadence she remembered so vividly, sent a shockwave through her entire being. It was Daniel's voice, older, scarred by time and an unspoken ordeal, but undeniably his. Her grip tightened on the phone, her knuckles turning white. She tried to speak, but her vocal cords seemed to have seized, trapping the countless questions, the years of unspoken grief within her. "It's me, Daniel," the voice continued, a profound sadness underlying each syllable. "I'm alive, but I can't come back." The words hung in the air, surreal and impossible. Alive. For 25 years, she had lived with the certainty of his death, built a new life upon that bedrock of loss. Now, in an instant, that foundation crumbled. A whirlwind of emotions assailed her. Confusion, a desperate yearning, anger at the cruelty of his silence, and a terrifying, fragile hope. Her mind raced, struggling to reconcile the impossible reality of his voice with the years of mourning, the official declarations of his demise. "Don't look for explanations, Emily," he pleaded, his voice tinged with an urgency that pierced through her shock. "It's too dangerous. I just needed you to know I never stopped loving you." His words were a jumble of contradictions, a cryptic message delivered from a seemingly unreachable chasm. Dangerous? What danger could possibly keep a man from returning to his life, to his love, for a quarter of a century? The questions screamed silently in her mind, demanding answers, explanations that were denied. She yearned to demand more, to ask where he was, what had happened, why he had waited. She wanted to tell him about her life, about Scott, about their children, about the endless nights she had cried for him. But before she could utter a single sound, before she could even formulate a coherent thought, a click echoed in her ear. The line went dead. The sudden silence was more profound than any silence she had ever experienced. It was an abrupt, brutal cut, leaving her adrift in a sea of overwhelming confusion and raw, pulsating emotion. She lowered the phone slowly, her hand still trembling, her body feeling strangely cold despite the warmth of the room. The photograph of Daniel on the coffee table seemed to mock her, his youthful, smiling face a stark contrast to the ravaged voice that had just spoken to her. The call had lasted mere seconds, a fleeting whisper across the vast expanse of years. Yet it had shattered the carefully constructed piece of her existence. Everything she thought she knew, Every truth she had built her life upon had been irrevocably altered. Daniel was alive. The impossible had happened. And with that single brief phone call, a new, terrifying chapter of her life had begun. The quiet, ordinary woman she had become was gone, replaced by someone thrust back into a mystery far deeper and more unsettling than she could have ever imagined. The night of the 25th anniversary of Daniel's disappearance was particularly difficult for Emily, a date etched into her memory with the indelible ink of profound loss. Every year, as October 23rd approached, a subtle melancholia would settle over her, a quiet acknowledgement of the unhealed wound. She had spent the evening navigating the usual family rituals with Scott and their children, a testament to her enduring strength and the life she had painstakingly built. Their laughter and stories filled the house, a comforting shield against the intrusion of painful memories. But her mind was miles away, adrift in the past. She moved through the hours on autopilot, offering smiles and participating in conversations, all while a part of her remained tethered to the distant, unyielding echo of 25 years ago. After everyone else had retreated to the quiet sanctity of their bedrooms, Emily found herself drawn to the living room, a space that offered a rare moment of solitude. The city lights, a vibrant tapestry beyond her window, shimmered with a detached beauty, their distant glow mirroring the unreachable stars. In her hand, she held a simple, silver-framed photograph of herself and Daniel, captured during a summer picnic in Central Park. Their faces in the image were young, unburdened by the weight of unforeseen tragedy, full of the bright, boundless promise of a shared future that had been so cruelly snatched away. A wave of profound, aching sadness washed over her, a quiet acceptance that the chapter of her life with him was irrevocably closed, reduced to a cherished memory, and a pervasive sense of what might have been. She traced the contours of his smile with her thumb, a silent conversation across the chasm of time. The silence of the house, broken only by the distant hum of the city. It was precisely 11:33 in the evening, a time that would forever be seared into her consciousness, when her phone, resting silently on the polished surface of the coffee table beside her, vibrated. The sudden tremor shattered the stillness, pulling her sharply from her reverie. The screen illuminated with an incoming call, displaying only the stark, impersonal words, "Unknown number." Her first thought was that it was a telemarketer, an irritatingly persistent intrusion into her private vigil, or perhaps a wrong number, an accidental dialing that held no significance. She almost dismissed it, her finger hovering over the red decline button, intent on returning to her quiet grief. But something, an almost imperceptible tremor of intuition, a prickle of unease that felt strangely akin to a premonition, compelled her to pause. A flicker of curiosity, an illogical pull, tugged at her. Against her better judgment, against every rational inclination. She slowly reached out, her fingers closing around the cool metal of the device. With a deep, almost imperceptible breath, Emily brought the phone to her ear, stepping unknowingly across a threshold into a reality far stranger and more unsettling than any she had ever dared to imagine. The future, which she thought she had long since defined, was about to unravel in the most unexpected and terrifying way. The click of the disconnected line echoed in Emily's ears, a chilling counterpoint to the impossible words she had just heard. Daniel was alive. The thought spun in her mind, a dizzying, disorienting force that threatened to unravel the very fabric of her reality. She sat motionless, the phone still clutched in her hand, the cold plastic a stark contrast to the burning confusion within her. Her breath came in shallow, ragged gasps, each one a struggle against the overwhelming tide of disbelief and raw emotion. How could this be? For a quarter of a century, she had mourned him, accepted his absence, built a new life from the ashes of her shattered dreams. His voice, though weary and distant, was undeniably his, a ghost from the past made flesh, or at least sound. A profound internal crisis erupted within her. The world, which had seemed so solid and predictable just moments before, now felt fragile, illusory. Every memory of Daniel, every moment of grief, every decision she had made in his absence, now swirled in a vortex of agonizing uncertainty. Was her marriage to Scott, the loving family they had built, all predicated on a lie, a terrible, cosmic joke? The guilt was immediate and crushing. How could she have moved on, loved another, raised children, when Daniel, the man she had loved so fiercely, had been alive all along? The betrayal, real or imagined, was a heavy cloak draped over her shoulders. Her immediate impulse was to wake Scott, to share this unbelievable truth, to seek solace and understanding in his steady presence. But the words caught in her throat. How could she explain it? How could she expect him to believe such an outlandish tale? The story itself seemed ripped from the pages of a fantastical novel, not the sober reality of her life. She pictured his face, the bewilderment, the concern, perhaps even the dawning suspicion. What if he thought she was losing her mind? What if this impossible truth shattered their world, the quiet peace they had cultivated? Their children, innocent and oblivious, depended on the stability of their home, the unwavering presence of their parents. Introducing this seismic shift, this terrifying unknown, felt like an act of devastating recklessness. The weight of the secret settled upon her, heavy and suffocating. She knew with chilling clarity that she could not speak of this to anyone, not to Scott, not to her closest friends, not even to her own mother, who had suffered so deeply alongside her during the initial disappearance. The consequences of revealing such a truth were too vast, too unpredictable. It would not only shatter her own life, but potentially devastate the lives of those she held most dear. The fear for her family's stability, for the innocence of her children, outweighed even the desperate need for answers. So in the quiet hours before dawn, Emily made a silent, agonizing decision. She would carry this impossible secret alone. She would pretend the call had never happened, or that it had been a hallucination, a cruel trick of her exhausted mind. She would continue to live her life, to be the devoted wife and mother she had become, while beneath the surface, a clandestine war raged within her. The yearning for Daniel, once relegated to the realm of wistful memory, now pulsed with a terrifying, immediate intensity. The question of what had happened to him, once a source of resigned sorrow, transformed into an urgent, consuming obsession. The phone call had not brought her peace or closure, but rather a profound new torment, an invisible burden that would forever separate her from the comfortable reality of her life. She was now a custodian of an extraordinary, dangerous truth, condemned to live with the echoes of a voice from the grave, and the knowledge that a man she had mourned for 25 years was, impossibly, still alive. The impossible secret Emily now carried was a burning ember in her chest, consuming her thoughts, fueling a relentless drive for answers. The initial shock of Daniel's call gave way to a cold, hard determination. She had to know. The cryptic warning he had issued, "It's too dangerous," resonated with chilling clarity, hinting at a reality far more complex and sinister than a simple plane crash. She understood that she could not pursue this alone, nor could she openly enlist the help of law enforcement without revealing the impossible truth to her family, a risk she was unwilling to take. Her only option was a discreet, clandestine investigation. Her architectural firm had occasionally worked with private investigators for background checks or property disputes, and Emily remembered one particular detective, a former police officer named Arthur Hayes. He was known for his discretion, his methodical approach, and his uncanny ability to uncover details others overlooked. After careful consideration, and a fabricated story about a sensitive personal matter requiring utmost confidentiality, Emily arranged a meeting with him. She omitted the impossible details of Daniel's phone call, instead framing her request as a desperate 25-year-old cold case, the unexplained disappearance of a private jet and her former fiancé. She emphasized her desire for discretion, offering a substantial retainer that underscored the seriousness of her commitment. Arthur Hayes, a man in his late 50s with tired eyes and an air of quiet competence, listened patiently. He asked probing, precise questions, observing her closely, but never once did his expression betray judgment or skepticism. He took the information she provided, the names of the passengers, the flight details, the inconclusive official reports, and the complete lack of wreckage or bodies. He promised nothing but a thorough, discreet inquiry. Emily left his office feeling a fragile flicker of hope, tempered by the immense burden of the lie she had just told. Days stretched into weeks, then months, as Arthur delved into the cold case. He revisited old police reports, interviewed former investigators, and meticulously cross-referenced passenger manifests with obscure corporate filings. His initial findings were disheartening, mostly reiterating what Emily already knew: an inexplicable vanishing. However, Arthur's relentless pursuit of even the most tangential connections eventually yielded a subtle yet significant anomaly. He discovered that one of Daniel's business partners on the ill-fated flight, a man named Richard Thorne, had a background far more complex than his public persona suggested. Richard Thorne, a seemingly reputable commodities broker, had, in the years leading up to the flight, been quietly acquiring significant shares in companies with known, albeit tenuous, links to offshore entities and shell corporations. These entities, Arthur's research slowly revealed, were occasionally flagged in obscure financial intelligence reports for their tangential involvement in high-value, unregulated transactions, often bordering on the illicit. There was nothing concrete, no direct evidence of Thorne's wrongdoing, but the pattern was enough to raise a seasoned investigator's eyebrow. The official inquiry into the jet's disappearance had focused solely on aviation accidents, never thoroughly exploring the personal or business dealings of the passengers beyond a superficial background check. Arthur suspected a hidden agenda, a dark undercurrent beneath the surface of the seemingly routine business trip. He presented his findings to Emily with cautious professionalism. He explained that Thorne's financial activities, while not directly criminal on the surface, were consistent with individuals involved in money laundering or clandestine asset transfers. This revelation sent a jolt of ice through Emily. The idea that Daniel might have been caught up in something dangerous, something entirely unrelated to a simple plane malfunction, was both terrifying and strangely liberating. It offered a potential explanation for his chilling phone call, for the danger he had alluded to. The jet's disappearance, once a tragic accident, was now beginning to resemble something far more deliberate, a calculated act with unseen forces at play. The silence surrounding Daniel's fate had not been empty, but filled with unseen threads of truth, waiting to be unraveled by a determined hand. This new information, though still vague, propelled Emily forward, confirming her deepest, most unsettling fears, and solidifying her resolve to uncover the full, terrifying truth. Arthur Hayes, the private detective, continued his meticulous work, his investigation into Richard Thorne's shadowy connections leading him down a rabbit hole of offshore accounts, shell companies, and whispered rumors within the financial underworld. The deeper he delved, the more convinced he became that Thorne was involved in something far more nefarious than simple tax evasion. The missing plane, he increasingly believed, was not an accident, but an integral part of a larger, darker scheme. His breakthrough came not from financial documents, however, but from an unexpected human connection. Following a lead from an old contact in aviation security, Arthur located a retired commercial pilot named George Miller. Miller had been flying a cargo plane on a similar route to the missing jet on that fateful day 25 years ago. He was a gruff, laconic man, initially reluctant to speak, having long ago put the disturbing memory behind him. But Arthur's persistence, coupled with his reputation for discretion, eventually broke through Miller's stoic facade. Over several hours in a dimly lit diner on the outskirts of Atlanta, Miller recounted an experience that had haunted him for decades, a memory he had suppressed, convinced no one would believe him. Miller described clear skies that day, a smooth flight when suddenly he witnessed something extraordinary, something that defied conventional explanation. He saw a small, sleek private jet, matching the description of Daniel's aircraft, being shadowed by two unidentified smaller planes. These were not military jets, he insisted, but fast, unmarked private aircraft. He observed with growing alarm as the two planes seemed to box in the larger jet, forcing it to change course. Then, chillingly, he saw what appeared to be a signal, a flash of light from one of the shadowing planes, followed by the private jet's distinct dip in altitude, clearly indicating a forced descent. It was not a crash, Miller asserted with conviction, but a controlled, albeit coerced, landing. He had noted the approximate coordinates, instinctively marking them on his flight log, but had dismissed it as a bizarre, perhaps illegal military exercise or an obscure private operation that he should not question. He never reported it, fearing repercussions, convinced he had witnessed something he was not meant to see, the remote area of the landing, an isolated airstrip in a sparsely populated region of the Bahamas, added to the clandestine nature of the event. Arthur listened, his every nerve ending alight. This was it, the missing piece, the reason no wreckage had ever been found. The jet had not crashed, it had been intercepted. Piecing together Miller's testimony with his own findings on Richard Thorne, a chilling picture began to emerge. Thorne, with his illicit financial dealings, was likely the target. The other passengers, including Daniel, were merely collateral. The interception was a calculated act, executed with precision. Arthur explained his terrifying hypothesis to Emily, recounting Miller's testimony with a quiet gravity. The plane was forced down. The passengers were not killed in a crash. They were taken. The implications were staggering, pushing the boundaries of what Emily had ever allowed herself to imagine. The new revelation was a devastating blow, yet it also offered a terrifying clarity. Daniel had not died in a fiery explosion, but had been alive, a captive in a scenario far more terrifying than a plane crash. The cryptic phone call, Daniel's desperate warning about danger, suddenly made horrifying sense. He had been part of a dark, unseen world for 25 years. Emily's stomach twisted with a mixture of terror and fierce resolve. The man she loved had been ensnared in a web of criminality. A cartel, as Arthur suspected, connected to Richard Thorne's shadowy dealings. The innocent tragedy had been a cover, a meticulously orchestrated deception. This knowledge, though harrowing, ignited a new fire within her. The quiet, grieving woman was gone, replaced by a seeker of truth, determined to uncover every last detail of Daniel's harrowing ordeal, no matter how dangerous the path. The true nature of the disappearance, once shrouded in oceanic mystery, was now revealed as a calculated abduction, painting a chilling new reality onto the canvas of Emily's life. The chilling revelation from Arthur Hayes, confirming the plane's interception and the sinister involvement of a cartel, plunged Emily into a maelstrom of fear and desperate hope. Daniel was alive, and his initial, cryptic warning now resonated with a terrifying clarity. The immediate surge of adrenaline, however, soon gave way to a cold, calculated determination. She had to establish contact with him, to understand the full, unbearable truth of his 25-year disappearance. Arthur, understanding the gravity of the situation and the immense danger involved, leveraged his network of contacts, eventually securing a secure, untraceable communication channel, a carefully encrypted application on an anonymous burner phone used by individuals living off the grid. The first few messages Emily sent were brief, hesitant, trembling with a mixture of hope and terror. She simply identified herself, waiting for a response that might never come. Days passed, each hour an agonizing eternity, filled with the constant checking of the device. Then, late one night, a reply, a single word, Emily. Relief, profound and overwhelming, washed over her, followed immediately by a fresh wave of fear. This was real. He was truly out there, somewhere, living a shadow existence. Their clandestine communication began, a slow, arduous process of staggered messages, each one painstakingly composed, carefully coded, and often delayed by the need for ultimate security. Daniel's messages were concise, devoid of emotional excess, yet imbued with a deep, weary sorrow. He revealed the horrifying truth, piece by agonizing piece. The private jet, he explained, had indeed been forced down by the cartel, not because of the aircraft itself, but because of Richard Thorne. Thorne, it turned out, was not merely involved in illicit financial dealings. He was a key figure in a massive money laundering operation for a powerful South American drug cartel, and the flight was a prearranged, high-stakes rendezvous for a critical transaction. When Thorne attempted to double-cross the cartel, the entire operation went sideways. The 5 passengers were taken captive. They were held in a remote, brutal compound, subjected to unimaginable conditions. Daniel described the harrowing days, the constant fear, the desperate struggle for survival. He revealed that one of the passengers, a young executive named Mark Peterson, had bravely, perhaps foolishly, resisted the cartel leaders, refusing to cooperate. Peterson was executed before their eyes, a brutal demonstration of the cartel's absolute power and a chilling warning to the others. The remaining 4, including Daniel, were given an ultimatum: cooperate or suffer the same fate. With no other choice, facing certain death, they agreed to become unwilling cogs in the cartel's vast criminal enterprise. For years, they were forced to utilize their financial expertise, their business acumen, to manage and expand the cartel's illicit networks, living as virtual prisoners, always under surveillance, always under threat. Then, 5 years prior to his call to Emily, a window of opportunity had opened. A shift in the cartel's internal power structure, a violent purge, created a momentary lapse in security. Daniel and the other two surviving passengers, fueled by a desperate, fleeting hope for freedom, seized the chance. They orchestrated a daring, perilous escape, vanishing into the vast underground network of aliases and hidden safe houses that they had inadvertently helped to build. But freedom, Daniel explained, came at an unbearable cost. They could never truly return to their old lives. The cartel's reach was too long, their vengeance too swift and brutal. To re-emerge would be to sign their own death warrants, and, more tragically, to place their loved ones in unimaginable peril. Daniel's most painful confession came last. He admitted that, over the years, he had occasionally observed Emily from a distance. He had seen her build a new life, witnessed her happiness, even seen her with Scott and their children. His voice, stripped bare of its usual guardedness, conveyed an almost unbearable anguish. He explained that he needed to know she was safe, that she was happy, even if he could only watch from the shadows. His call, 25 years later, was a desperate, almost reckless act, driven by an overwhelming need to finally close the loop, to let her know he was alive, but also to confirm that he could never truly return. He could not risk her life, or the lives of her children, by bringing the darkness of his past into their hard-won peace. Their love, he conveyed, remained undimmed, but his very existence was a threat to her safety, forever trapping him in the underworld, and her in the unbearable burden of his living ghost. Daniel's final messages, filled with the agonizing truth of his captivity, his forced cooperation, and the impossible reality of his permanent exile, settled upon Emily with the crushing weight of a terminal diagnosis. The profound shock of knowing he was alive had now transformed into a different kind of pain, a quiet, pervasive sorrow for a future that could never be, for a love that had to remain buried beneath layers of secrecy and danger. The clandestine communication had provided the answers she so desperately sought, but it had also delivered the devastating finality of their separation. He was not truly dead, but he was lost to her in a way that felt even more profound than physical demise. He was a living ghost, forever just beyond her reach, a silent guardian condemned to the shadows. Emily spent days in a state of suspended animation, going through the motions of her daily life while her mind replayed every word, every nuance of Daniel's story. Her professional life, once a welcome distraction, now seemed distant, almost irrelevant. The laughter of her children, usually a balm to her soul, occasionally pierced her internal torment with a sharp pang of guilt. How could she carry such a monumental secret, one that cast such a long shadow over their innocent lives? Yet the terrifying clarity of Daniel's sacrifice, his unwavering commitment to her safety and the safety of their children, provided a grim rationale. To reveal his existence, to expose the truth of his past, would be to invite untold danger into their world, to unravel the stability she had so painstakingly woven. The realization settled upon her with a quiet, heartbreaking certainty. She had to let him go, truly this time, not with the false finality of a plane crash, but with the profound understanding that his love, though enduring, could only exist in the realm of memory and silent observation. Their last exchanges through the secure channel were agonizing. There were no grand declarations, no dramatic farewells, just a shared, unspoken acknowledgement of the impossible chasm between them. Daniel reiterated his love, his profound regret for the years of silence, and his unwavering belief that she deserved a life free from the darkness that consumed his own. Emily, through trembling fingers typing on the burner phone, conveyed her understanding, her forgiveness, and the enduring strength of her love. It was a goodbye whispered across a gulf of 25 years, a final poignant acknowledgement of a bond that transcended physical presence, but could not defy the brutal realities of his perilous existence. The line once again went silent. But this time, Emily knew it was a deliberate, permanent severance, a final act of heartbreaking protection. With that final unspoken farewell, Emily made a conscious, courageous choice. She would not allow Daniel's living ghost to consume her present. She would honor his sacrifice by living fully, by cherishing the family she had built with Scott. The temptation to confide in Scott, to share the impossible burden, was immense. He was her husband, her confidant, the steadfast rock in her life. But the potential cost was too high. The thought of shattering his world, of forcing him to grapple with such a bewildering and dangerous truth, was unbearable. He deserved the peace of their carefully constructed reality, a peace untainted by the sinister undercurrents that had ensnared Daniel. And her children, innocent and happy, would remain blissfully unaware of the dark currents that had once threatened to pull their mother under. Emily buried the burner phone deep in a forgotten drawer, a silent sentinel of her impossible secret. She continued her life as before, but with a newfound depth of appreciation for the quiet moments, the simple joys, the unwavering presence of her family. The old ache for Daniel remained, a familiar companion, but it was now tempered by a profound understanding of his enduring love and the unimaginable sacrifice he had made. She moved through her days with a quiet strength, her exterior calm belying the turbulent waters beneath. The painful, yet liberating truth of Daniel's existence was hers alone to carry, a testament to a love that had defied death, only to be bound by the chains of a brutal, unseen world, leaving her to navigate her beautiful, complicated life, forever marked by the echo of a farewell that was both final and eternally present. Months bled into a year following Daniel's last, heartbreaking message. Emily had meticulously, almost ritualistically, returned to the rhythm of her life, a deliberate act of choosing the present over the haunting echoes of the past. The secret remained hers alone, a heavy, unyielding stone in her heart, yet one she had learned to carry without stumbling. She poured her energy into her family, into her work, finding solace in the tangible realities of her existence. The days were filled with the usual demands and joys, and the nights, though occasionally still visited by phantom whispers of Daniel's voice, were largely peaceful. She had, as best as she could, made her peace with the impossible truth. Then, on a quiet Tuesday morning, a plain, unmarked brown envelope arrived at her architectural office. It was addressed only to her in precise, almost clinical block letters, with no return address. The postmark indicated it had been sent from a small, nondescript town in rural Arizona, a place with no apparent connection to anything or anyone in Emily's life. A tremor of unease, a cold premonition, snaked through her as she held the package. It was too light to contain anything substantial, yet too firm to be merely a document. With a cautious hand, Emily opened the envelope. Inside, nestled in a small, padded insert, was a single, tarnished silver compass. It was old, its glass face cloudy, its needle rusted and stuck. For a moment she simply stared at it, her mind a blank. Then, recognition, sharp and sudden, pierced through her carefully constructed calm. This was not just any compass. It was the very same compass Daniel had carried with him everywhere, a small, sentimental gift from his adventurous grandfather. He had always joked that it kept him pointed in the right direction, both literally and figuratively. The compass had been missing since the day of the plane's disappearance, presumed lost with the aircraft and its passengers. Emily's fingers traced the tarnished metal, her thumb brushing over the faded inscription on its back. "My true north." Her eyes welled with tears, hot and immediate. This was no coincidence. This was from Daniel. A final, silent message. The compass, broken and unpointing, was a poignant symbol of his life now. Directionless in the conventional sense, forever off the map. Yet the inscription, his grandfather's words, spoke volumes. It was a farewell, a confirmation that he had moved on, not just from her, but from the world he once knew. It was a tangible piece of him, returned to her from the shadows, an undeniable testament to his survival and his ultimate, heartbreaking release from the binds that held him. The gift was both a comfort and a renewed source of sorrow. It affirmed that he thought of her, that she remained his true north, even in his hidden existence. But it also underscored the permanence of his separation. The compass was not a call for help, not an invitation to find him. It was a final symbolic gesture, a quiet act of closure from afar. It signaled that he had found his own peace, perhaps in a new, unidentifiable direction, and that he wanted her to find hers. It was a relinquishing, a release. Emily understood the implicit message. He was no longer bound by the past, no longer reachable. He was truly gone, in a way that transcended death, leaving behind only this small, poignant relic as a lingering trace of his undying love and his ultimate, necessary surrender to a life forever lived in the shadows. She held the compass tightly, its cold metal warming against her palm, a tangible connection to the man she had loved, now truly free and forever out of reach. The tarnished silver compass, a silent relic from a lifelong past, became Emily's anchor, a tangible connection to the man who had vanished and then, just as mysteriously, reappeared in her life before fading back into the shadows. It sat on her bedside table, a private emblem of an extraordinary secret, a constant reminder of the profound depths of love, sacrifice, and the enduring resilience of the human spirit. The initial surge of grief and confusion had finally, after years of torment, transmuted into a quiet understanding, a profound acceptance of the unchangeable. Daniel was alive, and in a way that truly mattered. He was free. His gift of the compass was not merely a farewell, but a release, a silent plea for her to embrace her own freedom, her own happiness. Emily found a new kind of peace in her life, a deeper, more profound appreciation for the blessings that surrounded her. The love she shared with Scott, steady and unwavering, shone brighter, no longer overshadowed by the haunting specter of what might have been. She looked at him with renewed gratitude, recognizing the quiet strength of his character, his unwavering support through years of unspoken internal turmoil. He had loved her through her grief, through her moments of inexplicable distraction, offering a stable foundation upon which she had rebuilt her life. She realized that love, in its truest form, was not always about grand gestures or perfect beginnings, but about unwavering presence, quiet understanding, and the courage to build a shared future, brick by painstaking brick. Her children, now growing into vibrant, independent individuals, brought her immeasurable joy. Their laughter echoed through the house, a testament to the life she had chosen, the future she had nurtured. She watched them play, listened to their stories, and guided them through their triumphs and challenges, knowing that their innocence, Their sense of security was a direct result of the choices she had made, including the difficult decision to carry her secret alone. There were moments, fleeting glances at their faces, when she saw a trace of Daniel in their independent spirits, a hint of his curiosity in their eyes, and in those moments, her heart swelled with a complex mixture of wistfulness and profound gratitude. She cherished these silent connections, these tiny, unseen threads that linked her past to her vibrant present. Emily understood now that love was not a finite resource, confined to a single person or a single timeline. Her heart held spaces for both Daniel and Scott, for the unique and profound ways each man had shaped her life. Daniel's love had been a fierce, passionate beginning, a dream cut short by an incomprehensible tragedy, a bond that had endured beyond the grave, demanding unimaginable sacrifice. Scott's love was the steady, comforting light that had guided her through the darkness, helping her to rebuild, to find joy, to forge a new, beautiful reality. Both were essential. Both were deeply valued. She never spoke of Daniel's call, nor of the compass to Scott or her children. The full, terrifying truth of what had happened to Daniel and the dangerous world he now inhabited remained her private burden. It was a secret she would carry to her grave, not out of fear for herself, but out of an unshakable need to protect the peace and safety of her family. Some truths, she had learned, were too heavy, too dangerous to be shared. The true mark of love, she realized, was not just holding on, but also knowing when to let go, when to sacrifice one's own need for answers for the greater good of those one cherished. She lived each day fully, with a quiet strength and a deep understanding of the complexities of the human heart, forever touched by the man who had vanished into the unknown, leaving behind only an enduring legacy of love, sacrifice, and the profound, undying mark of a life lived and lost in the shadows.